All right. So again, welcome to managing your books in the cloud using QuickBooks Online. I am Sherelle Martin. For those who don't know me, I own and operate a company called Nitrum Financial Solutions. We are an outsourced accounting and bookkeeping company located in right outside of Washington, D.C. in National Harbor. I am an advanced certified QuickBooks Pro advisor for the online version, certified for desktop as well, although we don't work with any desktop clients anymore. I am a member of the Trainer Writer Network, which is a small group of less than 200 people that Intuit hires to train business owners and accountants all over the world, sort of like an ambassador program. I've been nominated as a top 50 cloud accountant by HubDoc, which is an app in the accounting space 2 years in a row, coming up on almost time for nominations for 2019. And I'm a top 100 accountant to follow on social media. So if you're on Twitter, feel free to connect with me there. Today's agenda. So this class is scheduled from 10 to 1:30, which might seem like a long time, but it's actually not. We're going to try to cram in a whole lot of information in this 2.5 hours worth of time. We're going to talk about the introduction to QuickBooks. I'm going to talk about the benefits and the pricing. We're going to talk about how to navigate through QuickBooks Online for those who are on desktop and want to convert over. We're going to touch on that briefly too. It's actually more towards the, we mentioned at the beginning and then I'll mention it in more detail at the end. How to create your chart of accounts, products and services, how to work the customer/sales cycle transactions as far as creating invoices, receiving payments, how to work the vendor module, which is basically entering bills and then paying the bills. Then we're going to talk about bank feeds, which is where you'll probably spend 90% of your time when you're in your QuickBooks file. And then we're going to go over some reporting and additional add-ons. I enjoy doing these classes and these trainings, although I like them doing them on virtually, but I also like doing them live. And so the benefit of doing them live is that you get the question and answer and the interaction with the guests. So please feel free to use the Q&A to ask any questions that you may have. And what I'll do is at certain breaks in between the topics, I'll pause to go back and answer the questions at that time. Will I be sending out a presentation so we don't have to take much notes? I do send out a PDF version of the PowerPoint slides, but what I will tell you is that the entire presentation is not all PowerPoint. So we do go over PowerPoint mostly for this first bullet here that you see on the agenda. And then the rest of this is actually a live demo inside of the QuickBooks Online application. So you might still want to take your own notes, but you will get a PDF copy of the slides later. And if the recording comes out great, cross your fingers, we will be sharing it on our YouTube channel so that you can access it later at that time as well. All right, so QuickBooks. So the learning objectives for today is at the end of this class, you'll be able to identify the benefits of using QuickBooks Online if you don't know them already, of this section, and then determining what your subscription level is for QuickBooks Online that you need to have or you should have. So some of the technical benefits of using QuickBooks Online. Why is everyone talking about QuickBooks Online, right? So it's a cloud-based application. So you do not need to download any software to your computer. You access it through the internet. So the cloud is the internet for those who are unsure of the terminology. You go to this URL, you can access your file from anywhere in the world, no matter what time of day or night it is. You have complete access to your computers. There's no equipment to carry. There's no expensive computers and networks and servers hiding in these really cool closets. No networks to maintain. There is a mobile app so that if you don't have your physical computer or laptop, you can access it from your cell phone or tablet, iPad. The functionality on the mobile device is limited, but it does give you the basics as far as entering receipts and transactions, looking at your balances, and creating estimates and invoices, which is typically what most people do on the mobile app anyway. They do have a desktop version of it where you can download for those few people, and there are some out there that I know who still like the feel of having an actual software on their computer. You can download a desktop app for the QuickBooks Online, but it still functions as the QuickBooks Online version. I'm not really a big fan of it, but I do know quite a few people who like it and who use it. It's accessible across multiple operating devices, so it doesn't matter if you're Team Apple or if you're Team Windows, you can still get it, or if you're on your phone and it's Team Android versus Team iPhone, you can still access it no matter what device you're on. There's real-time multi-user access from anywhere, so the greatest benefit of it is that you get real-time insight into your business. You don't have to wonder or worry about what's happening with the numbers. You can get that information at any point in time on the spot. Multi-user access means that you can have, depending on which level you have, which we're going to go over in a second, you can have as few as one, which is just you operating it, accessing the data, as up to as many as 25. It's hosted, updated, and secured by Intuit. Intuit is the company that makes QuickBooks Online. They also make Mint.com, and they also do TurboTax. So you may have seen their name out in the space. But it is secured on their servers at 128-bit encryption. They do have multiple servers. So in the unfortunate event that one server completely crashes in one part of the country, another server is already up and online within seconds, minutes, maybe not seconds, but minutes. So there is in my experience, there's about a 99% uptime. So there's hardly ever any episodes where the system is down and the server is down for whatever reason. They do update the application every 6 weeks, but you don't even see it. You might log in and it might say there's been an update, refresh your screen, but you never even notice it. It doesn't have to come down per se. I don't know if any of you have ever, because you're entrepreneurs, you definitely don't stay up late at night, right? But I'm sure some of you, sometimes if you're up late at night and you're trying to log into your bank and the bank says the data is being updated or refreshed, come back in the morning. You never experience anything like that with QuickBooks Online. It is completely, like I said, it's up 99% of the time. Some of the workflow benefits, which are the things that we love about QuickBooks Online, is that it's integrated document management. And so what that means is you can actually, from your mobile device, you can take out your cell phone, take a picture of a receipt, and actually upload it straight to QuickBooks Online. And if we have time at the end, I can show you how that works from my phone. I don't know if I have a receipt handy, but I can kind of show you what it looks like from a mobile application standpoint. There are an ecosystem of apps with seamless integration. So if there's some feature or functionality that QuickBooks Online does not do, there is an app that probably does it. Or in the space, if you're in an industry where you need to have a separate app to manage the operations of the business, if you have an e-commerce store, or if you have a project management system that you need to access outside of QuickBooks, they have a ton of apps that actually you can use in that space that actually talk to QuickBooks Online. So the data that needs to come into QuickBooks can still come into QuickBooks, and you can have a full set of accounting books. There's no manual double entry, entering stuff in one software and then coming over and entering into another. None of that has to happen. It all connects and talks to each other on your behalf, and at the most, you have to push a button. And in some of those instances, you don't even have to do that. So there's a lot less data entry and way more automation, which is really the greatest thing, in my opinion, about using the software, because bookkeeping, you didn't get in the business to do bookkeeping. And if you've done any of it in the past, you're probably like, this is so tedious. This is so boring. Like, who likes to do this? Who wants to do this? And so this allows people like me who like the numbers and the aspect of it, but not the physical act of data entry, to be able to provide the service to clients and businesses in a more efficient manner. As I mentioned, they have an app, a mobile app. These are just some quick screenshots of what it looks like, but from the app, you can still get answers about your business anytime, no matter where you are. You can send estimates and estimates and invoices right there on the spot. So you don't have to say, okay, you know, think you're in a sales meeting. You don't have to go back to your office to try to create the invoice and then send it out later and get busy and forget and all that kind of stuff. You can do it right there on the spot. Even if you need signature, you can add a signature line for it. And as I mentioned, you can capture the receipts. So I don't know about anybody else, but I always tell people I live in a Rambler and it's one floor. I don't have enough space for all this paper. So to be able to take pictures of receipts and then throw them away is amazing for me. You do have to know, using the actual QuickBooks app, you do have to know, like, you have to enter the vendor name and the date and what category it applies to. But after a while, after the first couple of instances, it will start to learn what receipts are for. So when you snap a picture of an Exxon receipt, the first time you're going to have to say, you know, it was purchased on November 20th from Exxon. The amount will populate and then you can save it. But then the next time you scan an Exxon receipt, it's going to pre-populate those fields for you, the vendor name and the category. So you don't even have to no longer say it's Exxon for automobile expense. It's going to automatically populate for you. So it becomes like really quick and easy. And I tell people, are always like, I don't have time to take pictures. If you could take a selfie, you could take a picture of a receipt and you can do it right there on the fly. I do it every time I get in my car. I take the receipt. As soon as I get in the car, I snap the picture and then I throw the paper away and then I pull off. So it's done before I even leave the gas station. So great feature. Paper to allow your business to be paperless, but still audit proof, right? Because you still need to have some receipts for the IRS, for their giggles. So there are currently 5 different versions or editions of QuickBooks Online. The first one is the Self-Employed Edition, and it operates in its own on its own platform, separate from the other 4. It is a standalone product. It has automatic data backup. All of the systems do. They all have the bank level security. You get one full access user, which is you. So if you have someone else that you want to access it, you won't be able to. You can invite up to 2 accountants. So if you have a bookkeeper and a tax accountant, or a CPA and a bookkeeper, you can invite both of them and it doesn't affect your user access. You can send unlimited invoices and estimates and receive payments. It does have a feature where it calculates your estimated quarterly tax payments. But what I tell people is that number is just a ballpark number, because your taxes and what you owe every year is dependent upon your entire financial position. That number is just a piece of it. So don't take that number for gold. Like, it puts you in the ballpark. It makes you aware. But I would say still consult with your tax professional to get the corrected number, because if you own a home or if you have a spouse and you have kids or you have other businesses, there are other income and deduction items that can affect what your estimated tax payment should be. So it gives you the ballpark, but it's not the exact, it may not be the exact number. So, but it is a nice feature to have, because, you know, a lot of times we're telling people, especially this time of year, like, we're letting people know, like, hey, so your revenue, you're making $60,000 at the end of this year. And they're like, wait, what? Yeah. So you might want to look at some estimated payments, because at this point in time, you're going to owe, and these are conversations that we have with our clients all year long. But a lot of people have no idea until March, when they finish trying to put in a whole year's worth of data, that they may possibly owe. So it is a nice little feature to have. And it does track mileage for you on the go. So that is also a really good, a good feature to have. What I tell people is self-employed is for the person who is mostly a freelancer. So or a gig, Uber drivers or anybody kind of doing gig and freelance work. Like, this isn't really you have no desire to make this a full-time gig. You're kind of just dibbling dabbling on something that you're passionate about. And you're just trying to make some extra pocket change, right? I don't recommend it for someone who is running a full-fledged business, because it doesn't have all the full capabilities that you would need at that level. And you'll see that when I start talking about the other additions. So once you get out of Simple Start and you get into the next edition once you get out of Self-Employed, you come into Simple Start. And so Simple Start is the lowest of the next set of tiers. You get the automatic data backup and the bank level security. You still get one full access user and 2 accountant users and unlimited invoicing. But you also can charge sales tax to customers if your business is one that charges sales tax. You can print checks and record additional transactions. The Self-Employed allows you to record transactions, but it does not have the ability to do checks, I don't think. You can download bank and credit card transactions. You can import from QuickBooks Desktop. So if you are on desktop and you're looking to switch over, QuickBooks Desktop will not import into Self-Employed, but you can import into Simple Start and all the other editions. You can import and export your lists. So if you're living by Excel and you have your customer list in Excel, your vendor list or inventory list or some other list in Excel, you can import that into the software. At this level, you can add on payroll as an add-on feature, which we'll talk about much later in the session. But you can add on payroll, file payroll taxes, and get additional reports. The Self-Employed version only gives you a profit and loss, and that's pretty much it. You get a profit and loss. You can get, I think, a general ledger, but you can't get any type of comparative reports, any type of data analysis reports. If you have inventory and you want to run reports on sales and all of that, you can't do any of that in the Simple Start, in the Self-Employed. It is very, 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 very basic. But in the Simple Start, you can. And then if you find that you need more people to have access to your file, or you want to be able to manage your bills through a bill pay cycle, through a true accounts payable cycle, meaning you put the bills in, you wait 15 to 30 days, and then you pay them on some sort of schedule, then you would want to upgrade to Essentials. With Essentials, you get everything you get in Simple Start, plus these items here. So you now can have 3 users instead of 1 user. So if you have someone who's doing payroll or someone who's doing receivables and billing, you can designate those and give them permission to just that piece of QuickBooks Online. You can manage and pay your bills and schedule them out. You can have automatic invoicing and recurring transactions. So this is like one of my favorite features, is that within QuickBooks, if you have some sort of service where you're billing someone, and it doesn't even have to be a specific service, but you can work in a service-based business where you're doing contracts, construction, any kind of business that you have where you have to send out invoices and someone has agreed to so many invoices on a set schedule, you can set those up in QuickBooks Online to automatically create and automatically email that person the invoice on a scheduled date. So you no longer forget to do billing. That's a very common thing with small businesses. You get so wrapped up in doing the service, you're like, oh my gosh, I need to send out these invoices. Well, now when you get a contract signed, you can set them up so that the system automatically creates them and automatically sends them out. And if you use QuickBooks Payments, which is their merchant service that they have, then you can actually use a sales receipt and have it actually charge the person's credit card or bank account at the same time that it sends them the invoice. So super, super amazing. I know a lot of people use maybe PayPal or Stripe to do that sort of recurring payment system, but you can do that in QuickBooks Online as well. You get estimates, you can track time for people. So if you have people and employees or contractors that you want to track their hours, you can do that within the Essentials version. You get an additional reports around profitability and trends. So again, you get way more features than you do in the Simple Start. So what I always tell people, just like any software, buy at the bottom and then upgrade as you need to upgrade. Although your accountant does have the ability to downgrade if they're on your account, but I don't believe you as a user do. But for the sake of not paying for something that you don't need the service, you don't need at that point in your business, I would say start at the bottom and then go to the top. The next version is Plus. Plus gives you 5 users. You now can have time tracking only users and report only users. So these are people who only need to log in to put their time in, and that's it. They have no access to anything else in the file. The report only users means they only have access to financial reports. So if you have an investor, whether that investor is outside or inside or family or whoever. You can set it up where all they see is these reports when they log in at any point in time. You can always just email them, but it is an option that's there and available. You get purchase orders in this version. You can track billable hours by customer. So if you have a service or business where you need to bill people back for time and or expenses, then you will need to have the plus version so that you can mark that those items as billable, so that when it's time to create your invoices, you can get paid back for those services. You have class and location tracking, which is classes used for different revenue streams or different verticals within your business. I always like to use the example of a construction company. So if you provide services, and actually in the DMV, it can be any business actually, where you're serving residential clients versus commercial versus government. You can track those individually using the classes feature so that you're not having to finagle the numbers later to figure out how much money that we get from, you're not sitting there adding up customer names. You can just pull up a report based off of these classes that you set. Location obviously can be regional, it can be by state, it can be by county, it can be by city. It just depends on the nature of your business and how you need to use it. You can track project profitability. So QuickBooks Plus initially only had basic job costing and project costing. They've expanded upon it in the recent past, I would say the past year. They've expanded upon it. And we're going to be putting out some videos about that soon. So you can now get more robust project profitability reports from QuickBooks Online, which is huge, major, big. If you have a retail business, then you would definitely need to have Plus, because Plus is the only version. Plus and the next version are the only ones that do inventory tracking. They do follow for FIFO, which is first in, first out. So if you use another method, you need to have a conversation with your tax accountant, because you may have to do an accounting change if you want to switch over to this system, because at the present it does not do any other inventory valuation method. Two-sided items, which has to do with products and services. You can prepare and print 1099s directly from QuickBooks Online. You can create budgets from the Plus version. You can't get these items in any of the previous versions. And again, they give you even more reports than they already did. And then the last one is the newest one. They just came out with this earlier this year. It's called QBO Advanced. You get everything that you get in all the previous version in the Simple Start, Essentials, or Plus. But you have the ability to customize your users up to 25 people. You get unlimited chart of accounts and unlimited class and location trackings. The previous editions, you're limited to 250 chart of accounts and about 40 class and location items. So if you have a huge chart of accounts, which I don't recommend, but if you do, you would need Advanced. You can import invoices into the QuickBooks Advanced. You can create batch invoices. So if you have a business where you're creating 30, 40, 50, 100 invoices at one point, at a time, then QBO Advanced might be an option for you. And they now have a built-in integration with an app called Fathom, which does some financial dashboarding metrics for you for the business. Now, pricing. So this is always the big thing with QuickBooks Online. When you purchase the desktop, it is yours. You buy it off the shelf. If you catch it on sale, you might can pay at least maybe $300, but the price has gone up now to about $500 or $600 annually, and they come out with a new one every single year. With the online version, it is a subscription service, so you do pay a monthly fee. These are the latest prices. If you can see the smaller gray item that's lined through, that's the regular price for the item. This was the sales price at the point that I created this presentation. They always have a sale. They're like Macy's. There's always a sale going on. But if you work with a pro advisor, they can get you a different rate than the one that's offered online. The sales rates are usually good for 6 to 12 months, depending on the promotion that they're offering at that point in time. And it could be anywhere from 35 to 75% off. Again, depending on what promotion they're offering at that time. But like I said, they're like Macy's. There's always a sale going on. Just know that at the end of the term of whatever, when you sign up, it does go up to the regular prices. So it is a subscription service. You can pay monthly or annually. That is your choice. And that's probably the biggest hang-up that people have. The QuickBooks Online Advanced pricing is a little higher because, again, it does give you more functionality. It is actually built and designed more for a company who's more in the mid-market space or moving into the mid-market space, whereas the other editions are more for the small businesses. So if you're in the mid-market space and you're thinking of looking at other larger apps, then QuickBooks Online Advanced might be able to provide you with what you need. All right, a couple more slides and then we're going to jump into the demo. So here are some things that QuickBooks Online has and does that desktop doesn't. So I always get the question like, why should I use QuickBooks Online when I have desktop and I don't have to pay this monthly fee? And what is the benefit? Again, automatic bank feeds. So with QuickBooks Online, you connect your bank to your account, and every day in the middle of the night while you should be sleeping, but you probably are not because you're a business owner, your QuickBooks Online will go out to your bank, grab all the transactions that have cleared the bank, and drop them into your QuickBooks Online file. It drops them in a bucket, so to speak, and I'll show you. That'll make more sense when we get into the demo. But it doesn't record them to the actual ledger and accounts. It just drops them in a bucket. Now, there is some functionality where we can get it into the accounts, but we'll talk about that later. That's more of some advanced setup. But from the basic setup point, it will download everything that clears the banks and put it in your file for you to go in and review and post to the actual accounts. Automatic invoicing and sales receipts, which I mentioned before, where they can create this and automatically email them for you. You can also do automatic reporting. So just like you can set up automatic emailing of invoices, you can set up automatic emailing of financial reports. And so if you want to send them to a partner or a team member or a banker or an investor, you can set it up where create a book of reports that automatically gets emailed out on a certain day of the month. So for example, we set up all of our clients based off when they sign up. For those who sign up at a certain tier, they get their financial reports by the 10th of the month. And so as long as the QuickBooks file is set up so that every month on the 10th of the month, they automatically get emailed a report. So our job is to make sure the books are done and closed before that day so that they get good numbers, obviously, right? But it can be whatever you want it to be. There is an audit log, which is the same as equivalent of an activity log. So it tracks every user's move in QuickBooks Online. So if someone is saying, I didn't change it, something got deleted, something got voided, something got changed, somebody added a bunch of stuff, somebody deleted a bunch of stuff, you can actually go into the audit log and see the activity when they log in and everything that they did changed in the file. You can even see, unfortunately, you can also see when they're not working when they say they are. We've had that happen in the past where someone says that they're doing, I worked 3 hours, and it's like the audit log says you logged in and did 10 transactions. It took you 3 hours to do 10 transactions? No. So it does have the ability to work in that favor as well. You get service dates, and you also can do delayed charges, which is recording expenses kind of and putting them on hold until you're ready to bill them at a later date. Some things that the desktop has that are not in QuickBooks Online. So these are reasons why you might want to think about staying in the online product. Inventory, which I already mentioned, because it only does first in, first out. If you use any other valuation method, then it may not be the best product for you. And up until recently, desktop only allocated labor and payroll, but they've recently rolled that out like within the past 2 months. So I need to update my slides. But because now QuickBooks Online can do that. It has sales orders. If you had the Premier desktop version, QuickBooks Online does not do sales orders. The industry specific reports. So in QuickBooks Desktop, you do get reports that are specific to the industry. They have not yet pulled those into the QuickBooks Online product, but you can customize a report to do and give you any information that you could possibly need, or the reporting that you need might be in a third-party app that you have connected. Also, up until recently, it didn't do progress invoicing. and batch invoicing, which is now in the advanced version that just came out. I need to update this entire slide. And mileage tracking, which they literally just rolled out like less than 60 days ago. So now, previously you could only get the mileage tracking in the Self-Employed, and now you can get it in all of the versions, which is pretty cool. All right, so any questions so far to date? You guys are kind of quiet. Nope. Okay. Well, I suspect that the questions will come at this from here forward. So now we're going to do what I call take a test drive. So this is a link that you can access the QuickBooks Online test file. It's a sample company. It lives on the internet. Anybody can access it. You can do anything in it except send an email and add your bank. Like, obviously, you don't want to do that. But anything else it will do. So if you want to test out a feature, test to see how it looks and feels, you can do that if you haven't already. And it resets whenever you close it. So as soon as you close your browser, it resets back to where it was. So nothing ever gets saved. If you don't worry about, if you haven't wrote it down already, you can always just go online and Google QBO test drive and it will take you there. So let me show you how that looks. Oops, sorry. So if you type in test drive QuickBooks Online or test drive QBO, it does give you a link. It takes you straight to the file. And again, you say I'm not a robot. Sometimes you have to click some pictures just to verify that you're human. And then it drops you into Craig's Design and Landscaping. It's a sample company. It's a construction company that also sells products and services. So it kind of gives you the full picture of how everything works. Again, anything that you do to this file goes away once you close the browser. It just resets. So this, for those of you who have not already, and I don't know, if you could drop it real quick in the chat and let me know, like, how many of you are already currently using QuickBooks Online, and how many, who's like brand new, maybe subscribed but never even opened it, never even logged in, or hasn't even purchased it yet, but maybe looking to purchase it yet. You can just let me know really quick, either in the Q&A or in the chat, just so I can kind of know how detailed I need to go into this information. Used desktop for many years, brand new, just started, looking to purchase. Okay, cool. All right, so that's great. So I wanted to make sure that I'm talking to the right people, because this class does go over, like I said, it's a lot of information that I'm squeezing in. And I do kind of talk fast. So if you need me to repeat anything, let me know, and I will, put it in the chat. And I like I said, I'll stop at points to check the Q&A, and then I can re-go over things. At the end, I'll give you a link how you can purchase it from us at a discounted rate. Like I said, I'm an ambassador and I have an affiliate link so that you can purchase it at 50% off moving forward. And I'll give you that, as well as some links to other information and things that I shared throughout the presentation, just for you to kind of check into. You may need them now, you may not, but just so you can know what they're all about. So when you first log in, this is what you see. You see your dashboard here. You'll see your company name across the top, and you'll see this little box right here, smack in the middle. If you're kind of advanced user, you've used it before, and you don't really need this, you can hide this and it goes away. But when you initially set it up, this is what you see first. This is just kind of like a checklist of things they want you to get familiar with. It's a step-by-step, let's get familiar with QuickBooks Online. So, you click on an item and it walks you through the process of how to do each thing for the very first time. Once you do it, it places a check mark here and it goes away. One of the options I want you to note is that it says connect with an accountant. If you click on connect with an accountant and put in, and you have an accountant, you can type in their email address in this box and invite them to access your file so that they get access to so they know that you're in the system and they have it. They have their own separate dashboard, their own separate login, so you don't have to worry about them using your username and password. If you do not have an accountant, then you can click on the Find a Pro to Help link right here in the middle. And when you click on that link, you put in your city and state. It'll default with location if you have location settings turned on. You can put in a service that you need if you want specific things to kind of filter it down, and you can filter down industry and product, because there are still some people who use desktop and there are some people who use both. So you can filter it down to the product, and then it'll give you a list of people. And I need to see why Jeff is above me. I know Jeff. But it'll give you a list of all the accountants, all the QuickBooks Pro advisors who are in your area or near you. And so you can check them out. You can click on their profiles to see what they're talking about. If they have reviews, you can see reviews. So if you click on my profile, I have like little blurbs in here about what I do and, you know, who we help and so forth. And then at the bottom, if you scroll down, you can see custom reviews, reviews from various things. And so what I would say is, like, put in the information, check out your people, do your due diligence to make sure that, you know, this is somebody you think you would jive with. Check out 1 or 2 people if you want. But that's a good way to find someone who you know, if you don't have anyone already. If you have someone already, then obviously you want to give them your invitation and put it in here. All right, so I'm going to hide that now because I'm not going to go through the rest of the steps, because we're going to go through them in more detail as I go through the presentation. So this is your main dashboard. The middle of the screen is some financial cards that gives you quick insight into how your business is doing at that exact point in time, based off the information that has been entered already into the books. So you have an invoices section, an expenses section, and a profit and loss, and then sales. The expenses, profit and loss, and sales all have a drop-down arrow at the top, so you can filter the data that you see in that little mini graph. This is not meant to give you for like true full reporting. This is kind of like a quick glance if you're trying to see what's happening, what's going on in the business, just to make you aware of things that are happening. To the right, you have the bank accounts in your account, and if they're connected, you will see a blue hyperlink as to how many transactions are waiting to review. So every time QuickBooks goes out and downloads transactions, it puts it into these are the buckets, depending on which accounts they are that's connected. It drops them in those buckets, and then you have to actually click it and go in and review the transactions. And we're going to get to that shortly. Over to the left side of your screen is your menu items. So regardless of which item you hover over, you get menu options. So if you want sales, you can get to your sales, invoicing your customers. Expenses takes you to expenses and vendors. Banking will take you to the bank feeds. Reports takes you to reporting. So these are your menu items, and we're going to get to that as well. But where we're going to start is over here at all the way to the right at the very top. You see 4 or 5 icons over here. Help is just that, it helps. You can type in any question or answer. It searches QuickBooks' resource database as well as QuickBooks, the internet, for answers to questions that you may have. And in the event that you can't find a question, you can click contact us and get a phone number to call them, have them call you back, or actually do a live chat. My recommendation is, if you work with an accountant, go through your accountant first, because their access is quicker. And if it's something that they can't actually answer, more than likely they can answer it. But if they can't and they need to call QuickBooks or do a chat, they'll get through quicker based off of their level with the company. The Hourglass is a search, so you can search transactions in your file. You can search any kind of way by transaction number, date, or number. If you're searching transaction numbers, so say I'm looking for a check that begin with 100, I can just type in 100 and it'll give me a list of anything that had a transaction number that begin with 100. Receipt, invoice, estimate, purchase order, anything that starts with 100. But if I'm actually looking for a dollar amount, be sure to enter the decimal and the cents. so that it can only pull up items that have the amount of 100. It's very, it's pretty robust in what it searches for. I use it religiously when looking for transactions and finding things. So I definitely recommend using that feature. Next to that is your gear icon. So this is your preferences, if you will. This is how you set your file up. This is how it looks. This is how you tell it how it looks, how it feels, how it operates, what features you do use, which ones you don't. This is where you would tell all of that. There is a user profile, which is your name and your login and all of that. There is a feedback button. If you have any feedback, good or bad, click that button. That button sends messages to QuickBooks Online, and they monitor it heavily. If you have any issues, send it there first, because they'll fix it faster than if you tried to email them, faster than if you tried to tweet them, faster than if you tried to call them. I don't even know if you can. Use the feedback button. I honestly know firsthand that they actually monitor it, and it actually has a queue in the background of things for if it's a feature or something you would like to see. They check that as well. They track it, and if they get enough requests, they do implement it. But for the ones where it's like there's a glitch or something like that, they do get to those relatively quickly. So send the feedback through that button. The other items in this section, and we're not going to go through every single one because we'll be here forever, but the ones that I'm going to just touch on, the ones that you may or may not be interested in the most. Under tools, there's the import data option. So if you want to import your lists, you go there, you click on that, and you can import your customer list, your vendor list, your chart of accounts, or your products and services. Bank data we're going to talk about when we get over here to banking, so I'm going to leave that one alone for now. But say you have a customer list, you click on customers, the very first screen, there's a download a sample file hyperlink. That will give you a file in a CSV, which is an Excel file basically, formatted so that you can make sure that your data is in the right columns, that you have the right columns to actually import. Once you've done that and you've set your file up, then you can go to browse, and let me see where I got my stuff at here. Hold on one second. But then you browse out to wherever your data lives, and then you can actually import the data directly into QuickBooks Online. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to import. I have some customer data. Oh, unexpected server. Oh, hold on. It doesn't like that it somehow that file was a Google Sheet, not an Excel sheet. So noted that if you use Google Drive as much as I do, that it does have to be an Excel file and not a Google Sheet. They are putting in beta the ability to import, export from Google, but it's not quite rolled out yet. That's also a request that I and some others have requested, just because, you know, it's Google, we use it more. So that's the Excel version. So once you import the file, if you set it up the way the sample file gave you, all the columns that are supposed to populate will populate. And if you have data in them, it'll put a check mark that they matched to the right column within QuickBooks. And then you hit next. It again shows you the names of the people and all the data that you're importing. Note that you cannot have two names be the exact same. So if this was Kim Johnson and this was Kim Johnson, it wouldn't import. It would kick back an error message. So your name column, and that's across anything. So it can't, even if it's a customer and if someone who is a customer and also a vendor, you do have to make at least one thing distinct. So what I usually do is, if it's someone who's a customer and a vendor, then I put a hyphen and a V behind their name, so I know that that's the vendor name, or a C if they're the customer. And that's just so that they're different in my file, because it won't recognize the same name across two things. So once you make sure all of that is there, add any missing information, and then you hit import. And if it comes up really quickly, but at the top it tells you 8 of 8 customers successfully imported. And now when I go over to sales and then I click on customers, I can see the customers that I added. There's Jason, there's Karen, there's Kim. These are the people that I just added. There's Mike. And it drops them right in. And that is because under the customer profile, instead of you having to manually enter in each person's name, address, phone number, email address, all of that type of information, you can import it in relatively quickly. So depending how many customers you have, this is a very, could be very beneficial. If you only have 5 or 10 customers, you might be okay with entering them individually. But if you have 100 customers or 50 customers even, you might not have the time or want to spend the time to sit and do it. And so you can import that way. Budgeting, if you have the Plus or Advanced version and you want to do budgets, then this is how you would add budgets. I'm not going to go over it. It's more of an advanced training, but if we have time at the end, I'll come back and touch on that. The audit log is where I said it tracks everyone's move in and out. So it shows when someone logged in and it shows when they log out. It shows that they edited a transaction. It'll show if they added something, whether it's a category, a service, an account number. It'll show if they deleted something. And each item has a hyperlink next to it. So if you click on the blue hyperlink, it shows you exactly what they changed. In this instance, it was a category. If I scroll up a little bit to a transaction, let's find a transaction. Added credit card expense. When I click on the blue hyperlink, it actually takes me to the transaction that got entered. So again, if you're looking for a transaction, you want to see what somebody changed, you can absolutely do it there. If I don't want to see the transaction, but I want to see what they did, like the history of it, if you go all the way to the right and click on the blue hyperlink that says view, it actually shows you a history of everything that happened. So anything, this is when it was originally created. If someone goes back later and changes an amount, it'll add that to the history. If they mark it cleared or uncleared, it'll add that to the history. So you'll be able to see a trail of everything that happened to a transaction. So pretty cool. I do use that. Not a lot, as much as some of the other features, but I do use it. I'm going to skip lists. I'm going to come back to lists. I'm going to come over here to your company. Under your company, you have the very first item is account and settings. So this is where you put in your name, your address, all the information that you put in when you set up your file. To brand it, you can brand your QuickBooks Online file to match your brand. So if you want your logo to appear at the top of your invoices, this is where you would put it in. You would simply click on the account and settings. There's a little pencil right here to the right. And when I click it, it opens up the box, and then I can click on logo and then click the plus. And then it's going to open up a browser. It's going to take me to my browser so that I can find my images that you can't see right now because it's on another screen. But there it is. It opens it up, and then I can add the logo. And so now every time I create an invoice, my logo is on the screen, is on the invoices. I can add it to my reports if I want to add it to my reports. I'll put in my federal ID number, and when I'm done, I click save, and my logo did not change. Why didn't it save? Oh, I have to check it first. I don't like that logo. Let's pick a new one. Let's pick another one. There's a little butterfly. I usually have a little butterfly that I use. I don't know why it's not saving today. It usually saves automatically. We'll figure that out later. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. But here you'll put your, set up your industry, put in your name and addresses. You can have a different address. Your company address can be different, from the client-facing address. So if you, particularly for small businesses who operate out of their home, if your company address is your house address, but you don't want that to appear on your invoices or things for customers, you can actually put in a different address that customers see. So if you have a PO box or a UPS store address, you can add it there so that they see that address instead of your home address. So I recommend that if you do have a small business to at least get a PO box or UPS store address, because you don't want anybody to show up at your house. I've had people say that when I first started my business, someone said that to me, and I was like, no one does that. And then it happened. Well, they didn't show up at my house. They showed up because I have a UPS store address, and we had a meeting scheduled, and I was specifically put the meeting set up as a virtual phone call meeting, and for whatever reason they thought it was live, and they showed up at my address, which was a UPS store. And so had it been my home address, they would have showed up at my home. So I recommend having a separate address if you can. The usage shows you your usage as far as users and chart of accounts, because remember I mentioned that those are limited. So you can monitor how close you are to it. A lot of businesses are not coming across the top of this number unless you're over a certain size. So it does give you access to that. The sales is where you would access, turn on the features for your sales, your invoicing, your products and services. If you want to offer discounts, if you don't, if you do deposits, if you don't, if you want to add shipping or not. If you want to have preferred terms show up on every invoicing, or if you want to change it on each invoice, you can. If you do need progress invoicing and you need to turn that on, then you can just place a check mark beside it and hit save. And so now we can do progress invoicing. You can set up messaging templates for your emails as they go out and your reminders. So on messages, I can say for my invoices that it says this every time it goes out automatically. For my estimates, it says something different. For my sales receipts, it says something different. So you can have these messages preset so that you don't have to edit them every time you get ready to email out something. They're already there for you. And then at the very top, you can customize. This is a second way to get to it because you can get to it another way. But you can customize how your invoices look for customers. So you can also get to that by clicking the gear and hitting custom form styles. It takes you to the same place. But QuickBooks Online has at the present, they only have about 5 different templates that you can choose from. 6, we got a new one. Different templates that you can choose from. So you can choose how your emails, your invoices look. You can add your colors and your branding. If you know the actual color code, you can type it in and it'll change to the actual color code. So you can make them look and feel however you want them to look and feel. You can also edit the messaging here. And if you have QuickBooks payments, you can turn it on so that they get if you notice on the invoice over here under the $675, if I turn on ACH payments, they get a link that says pay invoice. And if I turn on credit card, it put the credit card icons at the bottom too, so that the person can now pay by bank or credit card, which makes life a little easier, gets you paid a little faster. Oh, what just happened there? I think I clicked on something wrong. Yeah. All right, so we're done here. We're going to come back over to the gear icon, chart of accounts, which is also under your lists. Chart of accounts is how your transactions get recorded to your books. A little bit of accounting here. So these are all of the accounts that tell QuickBooks what a transaction is. If any of you ever took a business class, you know that there's 2 sides to a transaction. So if it comes out of cash, it has to go someplace else. If it comes into receivables, it has to go someplace else. So these are all of your accounts that you have in QuickBooks. It does default when you first set up your file based off the industry you select. It will default to a set of accounts for you. You can delete those and import your own using the import function. You can edit them and change the naming of them to whatever you would like. It is fully editable and customizable to meet your needs. But they do give you a handful of accounts kind of the ones that are used the most, you know, cash, checking, accounts receivable, accounts payable. On the income statement side, it'll be advertising expense, your sales account, advertising expense, auto expense, repairs and maintenance, telephone expense. These are things that every business has. So we'll pre-populate those, and then you can add accounts as you need to based off of your business and industry. I would say check with your accountant. Your accountant may have a customizable list that they give out, like a template that they use to actually update the list. All right, before I go over here, I'm going to see questions if there's any. Suppose you have accounting experience. Can you manage the business yourself? Yes. So QuickBooks is easy to use to a fault. If you have a little bit of knowledge around it, you can. I'm a believer of business owners knowing how to do the basics. So as a business owner, you need to know how to create the invoice. You need to know how to put in an expense. You need to know how to run a report. At a minimum, you should know how to do those things. You don't need to go into complete detail of how to work the entire file, but you should know how to do those things at a bare minimum, so that in the event that your accountant or bookkeeper can't do it, they're unavailable for whatever reason, you're not stuck, left with not getting what you need at that point in time, if that makes sense. It is very easy to use. It is very user-friendly. It is almost too user-friendly because you can make a lot of mistakes if you don't understand the back end of accounting. So what I would say is, if you have experience in accounting and you understand how it works in the background, then you absolutely can do it yourself until you get to the point where you're too busy to do it yourself. But if you don't have that background knowledge, then I would say just go ahead and hire someone. Because if mistakes are made and it has to be cleaned up later, it can cost you more money in the end. So that's what I would say to that. All right, so we're going to go back to the dashboard for a second. So now we're going to talk about the icon bar over here on the left. So these are the different places where you record transactions. You can also get to them by clicking on this plus at the top right corner, which is moving soon. They sent out an email, said that they're moving it to someplace else. I don't know where yet. So it might not be there when you log in one day. But for the time being, this is also how you can get to your transactions. So I always tell people there's more than one way to do stuff in QuickBooks. Doesn't matter if you come here and go under vendors and hit create an expense, or if you go over here to expenses and hit expenses and find a vendor and then create an event. Either way, it takes you to the same place. I just want you to be aware that there are more than one way, so you're not stuck trying to say, wait, that's not what she said, or someone's telling you one way and it's different from what I said. There are multiple ways to do everything in QuickBooks, and that's the same in the desktop too. So it's okay. Which way you do it is totally up to you. It's a personal preference. So I'm going to show you some stuff from the Quick Create menu, and I'm going to show you some stuff from the left menu bar, just so you can kind of get a feel for that it can happen either way. So one of the main things that you're probably going to be doing is invoicing your customers, right? And so if you click the Quick Create Plus and go over to customers, you can create an invoice, receive payments, estimates, credit memos, sales receipts. You can refund for money if need be, delayed credits and charges. So I'm going to click on the invoice option, and a screen that drops down. Everything is a slide down or a slide across. This is your invoice screen. What you will notice as I go through this, that the invoice screen looks very similar to the expense screen, which looks very similar to the check screen, which looks very similar. Like, all the screens look similar. You just have to be mindful of what's in the top left corner to make sure you're where you're supposed to be. So that top left corner will tell you if you're in an invoice, an expense, or a check. Next to it is a little time symbol, which basically means recent transactions. So if you click it, it's going to show you maybe 10 transactions or so that were most recently entered or edited. And then there is an option to view more if you need to look for something beyond that. But that's what the little symbol is. It's recent transactions. So when you're in your invoice and you need to send a customer an invoice, you can click on the drop-down arrow and select their name, or you can type their name directly in the box and it will pop up. Once you've had their name and you hit tab, all of their information populates. Address, the terms that have preset for their email address pre-populates. The middle part of your screen is where you would select your products and services. So this is the back end of your accounting. So this is when you're recording your transactions. And everyone doesn't have this. Like if you don't use products and services, you can record directly to income and directly to expenses. But if you have a business where you need to track your revenue by different service codes, cost codes, job codes, or if you just want to track them by different categories, you can create those in the products and services. And then when you're creating your invoices here, you can come in here and select the product and service. The customer will not see this column. They'll only see the description, the quantity, and the rate. But in the back end, you can track your business metrics by the different items that you're selling or offering at a more detailed level. So that's the benefit of using the products and services. But if your business is not that sophisticated yet, you don't have to have those. You can just have it set where it goes straight to an account. So the description pre-populates based off what we set up in the product and service for design. You can edit it if you need to for vacation home. I don't know. Right? You put in the quantity, a rate. It could be when you set up your products and services, you can have rates already preset. But if for whatever reason you need to change it because maybe it was a special project that you charge a different rate for, then you can absolutely change it. If you charge tax for your services and you have it turned on, you will have a sales tax button box to check for it to calculate the sales tax. I'm going to leave it unchecked for the time being. If I want a certain message to appear on an invoice, I can put it here. If I want to attach a file to this transaction, you see down here where it says attachments, you can actually either click it and browse out to your computer to find a file, or you can actually drag and drop a file directly into that box. And it uploads relatively quickly, and then you can check the box to attach it to the invoice. So when you email it, they get the invoice plus the item that you've attached. If you charge billable time, billable expenses, which I'm going to show you how to put it in a second, they will pop up this. You notice that this little drawer popped out over here on the right. So these are expenses, and in this case, it's hours worked for this particular customer that need to be billed back to this customer. So the drawer pops out to show me that that is there. And if I don't need to add it to this invoice, then I ignore it and then I can just save. But if I need to add it to this invoice, I can click this little add button and it throws that information over onto the invoice for me. So I don't have to re-type any of that information in. And then I can save it. You can save it. You can save and send. Will automatically email the email address that you have up here in the top corner. I can save and share a link. So share a link, we'll save it, and then the screen pops up with a link where I can copy and paste that in an email in my own personal email. So if you want to send them a separate email with other information, you can take this link and put it in there, and they can just click the link. And then if I don't need to send it, or I can just save and close, right? The bottom also has options to print in preview. So if you want to see what it looks like before you email it, click print or preview, click that option, and then it shows you a preview of what that invoice looks like. So if you want to see it before it actually goes out the door, you can do that. Or if you need to print it because you're going to snail mail it, then you can do that as well. Don't snail mail. Email, more efficient. If this is an invoice that needs to go out on a regular basis, so remember we talked about recurring transactions that it can automate, then I can click this option that says, so first I'm going to save it. And then I can click make recurring. And so what it does is the top of my screen changes now to say recurring. So now it's in a template mode, and I can name the template. I put the customer information, all that pre-populates. I can tell it to automatically email this person on the 10th day of every month starting next month. They will automatically get and then and if I don't need this other line to go because that was a special case, I can remove that line from the template. And then I can save the template in the bottom right corner here. And so now every month on the 10th of the month, Amy's Bureau Sanctuary is going to get this invoice emailed to her automatically. So I never forget to send her an invoice because it's automatically done. If I had the payments feature turned on, then up here at the top, I would have the option to add the button to pay by ACH or credit card. So I'm going to save the template. And so the invoice was posted, and now my recurring transaction is set up. Recurring transactions live, if I click on the gear and go over here under lists to recurring transactions, that is where they live. So now you can see it's a list of all the transactions that are already created. And there's my invoice to Amy that's going to go out. It tells me the very next date that it's going to send it. And then once it sends, then the previous date will populate, and then it will show me the very next date. And so it'll keep going because I didn't set it with an end date. It's going to go on forever and ever. I'm going to edit it so you can see if I wanted to give it an end date, then in this end column, I can say in after so many occurrences. So after 5 times stop, or I can say in by a certain date. So maybe I want to say, I want you to end by April 30th. So the last one they'll get is April 10th. And then I'm going to save it. So it'll keep going. And then once that date happens, it'll stop automatically. So you also don't have to worry about overbilling someone or billing someone in error, because all of that will happen for you. You can set these transactions. If you don't want them to automatically go out, you can set them as reminders. And as a reminder, they'll show up on your dashboard at the very top of your screen when you first log in. So you'll know that it's something that you need to take care of, but you don't, maybe you need to edit it. Maybe you just want to see it first. But you can set it where it's a reminder and not automatically go out the door. So that option is there. And you can set recurring transactions for any kind of transaction. It can be a invoice, it can be a bill, it can be an expense, it could be a journal entry, it could be a receipt, it could be a payment, it could be anything. You just set it up, and it's kind of like a set it and forget it is what I call it. Set it and forget it. Okay. So now we're going to go back to sales. And I want to take you to your sales screen. So this is your sales screen, and they're updating this very regularly, actually. They're rolling out a lot of new features. And the overview is one of the newest features that they rolled out. So this overview gives you income over a time period. And at the top of this box, you can change that time period to whatever frame you want to see. Right now it's set to a month. If I wanted to set it for the quarter, I can change it to the quarter. If I want to set it for this year, this week, this month, oh, I guess I can't do this year. I can do this year by month. Then I can see it that way. So it looks like we were pretty slow. And then all of a sudden in June, things started to pick up a little bit. So you can set it for whatever time period you want. And there's other boxes here, which are things that come in your settings. So once they're set up in your settings, then these boxes will go away. If you don't use those features, you don't have to. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the same invoices box, which you can see on the home screen. There's some shortcuts here. Again, this is part of your setup, so we're going to go past all that. But next to that is sales, all sales. This is every transaction. So this screen looks very similar to the expenses one too. So this is all sales that have been entered into your system, every touch point of it. So it's the invoice, the payment, the sales receipt, the credit memo. They all appear here in a list in consecutive order. You can filter it any way you want. If you want to see them by type, you can click on the top and it'll filter by type. If you want to see it by due date, you can filter by due date. If you want to filter by status, you can show you status. So if you want to see everything that's overdue at the top, and then things that are not overdue, and then everything below it that's paid. But it shows you every piece of it. The top bar is a money bar. So if you, as you see as I hover, it raises up slightly. So if I click on one of those items, it will actually filter it down to just those items. So I clicked on overdue bills, and so now all I see is what's overdue. To bring everything else back, I just click it again and it lowers, and then everything else comes back. Again, it's just a quick visual for you to see what's happening in the business. You can enter a new transaction from here by clicking on this big green button over here to the right, which gives you the same customer options as it did up here under the plus. It's the same options. So remember, more than one way. Next to all sales, we have invoices, which only shows invoices. It doesn't show the payments. It doesn't show the credit memos, any of that. It only shows you invoices. The cool thing I want you to note on this screen is the status. So the status shows you an invoice that has been paid and not paid. But what I want you to know is next to it in parentheses, if you have an email address in there, it will show you whether it's been emailed or not. So it says in this instance, not sent. If it has been sent, it will say sent next to it. And when the person opens it, it will say viewed. I think it says viewed next to it. And if they pay on it, you'll see partially paid until the moment where it's paid in full, and then it will say deposit, paid, not deposited, and then deposited. So several steps, but you can see at what point in your cycle where that invoice is sitting. So if you need to post the payment, you can go over next to it and hit receive payment. If you need to send the person a reminder because they're overdue, under the actions column, you can click the little arrow and hit send reminder. And here's a pre-populated email based off of the messaging we set up in our settings, but you can always edit that information to say whatever you want. But it's basically just saying, hey, Shara, here's a reminder that we haven't received your payment for your invoice. Please let us know if you have any questions. And then you can send it out. What I will say, depending on the type of companies that you deal with as customers, when you're sending out these invoices, I just want you to make note from my experience that when you're dealing with larger corporations and companies, you might need to have them check their spam folder the first couple of times to make sure that they got it. Because some of these larger corporations have security blocks, and that sometimes the messages don't come through at first initially. But once they've white label the email address and save it, then they shouldn't have any problem. So just note that up front. Does this interface communicate with PayPal and outside website sales? It does integrate with PayPal. I'm not sure if I know what you mean by outside sales, like in what capacity. Give me a little more information on that. But it does integrate with PayPal. So if you prefer to do your invoices in PayPal or you prefer to do your invoices in Square, you can still do that if you would like, and set up the integration with QuickBooks Online. And then actually the only information that will come through is when this payment is received. Like the actual invoices won't come through. PayPal has one feature, one setup where you can, but to me, it doesn't make sense. It's just extra data. So you can have the setup where the payments come through once they're received. So the integration is there for PayPal, for Square, and most other apps as well. With Stripe, it pulls in, there is an integration with Stripe. It will pull in because Stripe creates the setup in Stripe and then sends your payment over. So you'll see the payment in your bank feed, but it won't automatically create the invoice in QuickBooks for you. That's the only one that doesn't do it. Because Stripe is more of a payment processor, and so there's no invoicing it doesn't create an integration for an invoice, but the payment does come through. What I know a lot of accountants have done is they've used an app called Zapier to create, to set up a Zap where if a payment, every time a transaction happens in Stripe, that it will create an invoice. So if you haven't heard of Zapier, it's an automation tool. It allows two apps that don't talk to each other to talk to each other. So I know a lot of accountants who have created, they're called Zaps, so that when a Stripe transaction happens, an invoice gets created and populates in QuickBooks so that it's there. But at the moment, from what I know, I don't use have a lot of clients who use Stripe, but at the moment, from what I know, that's the only way to get an invoice into QuickBooks from Stripe. Other than that, it's just going to be the payment that comes through. It's called Zapier. Let me type it in so you can have the right spelling. It's a pretty cool app. For the most part, it's free. They do have some premium apps that you do have to pay a fee for. So QuickBooks is considered a premium app. So if you want something to zap to QuickBooks, it's $20 or $25 a month. But you can set up a lot on the free plan with other apps. It's just QuickBooks seems to be is one of their premium apps. But it basically allows you to make two apps talk to each other that don't really talk to each other. Again, I am really big on efficiency and automation, and so I'm all about apps and things that make stuff come over that you don't want it to come over, to make stuff happen without you having to physically do it. So would it be one payment from PayPal or PayPal sales? So the PayPal integration, there's two. There's one integration where you set it up like a bank account, and then only thing that comes through is the payment. So it works just like the bank feeds, which I'll show you in a second. When the transactions hit PayPal, they come into just the bank feeds and you're recording it. And then there's a separate integration where you can actually pull in the actual sales. So it depends on how you set it up, but they do have the ability to set up both ways. I always say it depends on what the business does to determine if it's right. The best way for me, in my experience, has been to set it up like a bank account, because most of the people that I work with or have worked with only use it for payment. They don't use it to actually create invoices. So in those instances, it's best to be a bank account. I hope that answers the question. You're welcome. Let me just scroll up and make sure I didn't miss any. How would I enter PayPal as a bank feed? Okay. All right. So next to invoices, you have your customer list. And so this is where all of your customers' information will live. Their name, address, information. It does show you a current open balance. So this is what they owe you at that point in time. At the top of that screen is a big green button that says new customer. So if I need to add a customer, I can always add a customer and type in all of their information. So this is the information I was saying, if you have a long list when you first set up your file, that you would have to enter in individually one by one. But if you have the list and you set up the import file, you can import it. It will save you. You can see how it'll save you a lot of time, because this is a lot of sales to enter for 50, 100 customers. But if you have 5 or 10, you might not mind doing it, because then you can get familiar with how it works. You could put notes in their profiles, their tax ID information, payment and billing information. You can attach contracts to it. So if you have documents or things you need to have attached to their profile, just for quick reference, you can attach them here as well. You can have sub-customers. So I'm going to scroll down here to Freeman. You see Freeman Sporting Goods. Sub-customers, but you cannot have sub-vendors, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So sub-customers is similar to project accounting, if you think of it that way. So I always use the example of Ryan Homes. So Ryan Homes is our customer. Development One is their sub-customer. So this community is the sub-customer. That's the best way I can explain. So different locations. In this instance, their customer is Freeman Sporting Goods, but they have 2 locations. And so each location is a customer. They might have more locations that aren't customers, but these 2 locations are their customers. So they're sub-customers. And the way a sub-customer works is when you look at their profile, you can actually set it where they get billed directly, or they get billed, or you bill it to the parent company, which in this instance is Freeman Goods. So you can set it up depending, and each customer or sub-customer can be different. It's not a one size, fits all kind of thing. So that's your customers. once click on a customer's name, it takes you to their transaction history. So for Amy's Bird Sanctuary, now I can see all of the transactions that we've done with her. And if I need to create a new one, I can create one here. So here's the third way to create an invoice, right? I can click on new transaction and invoice. And if I click on it to create the transaction from her profile, her information will automatically pre-populate. I don't have to type that information in. So that's something to note. And real, like I said, all about efficiency. The less keystrokes, the better. So the information automatically populates. So all I have to do is enter in the rest of the information. If I need to receive a payment, I can click on the arrow and do payment. And from here, if I do it that way, it gives me all of her open invoices, and then I can check off, put in the amount that she paid. So say she's paying $100. Maybe she paid it with a check. So reference number can be check 1234. The deposit to account, I want you to note, if you're depositing it straight to a bank account, check the bank account. If you're batching your deposits together, so you're going to the bank with 2 or more payments that you're putting in at the same time, then you want to check the undeposited funds option. But this is an area where a lot of people miss. They don't pay attention to this box, and then they can't figure out why they don't have money. Their QuickBooks doesn't show that they have money. It's because it's sitting in the wrong place. So when you put in the amount, it'll automatically try to figure out which transaction you're trying to pay on. If it's not the full amount, it'll default to the first thing that's there. But if I put the actual full amount, well, it's supposed to. Let me go back out and come back in. Payment. And if I put $825, then it will try to guess it by the amount. Maybe she's paying that full thing in full. Maybe she's not. Maybe she's paying part of this and then the difference on this. So you have to kind of make sure you know what you're marking the payments to when you're entering in amounts. I'm going to just go back to my $100 example. And then I'm going to put check. Payment method, there is an option to put check. If you don't use QuickBooks Payments, then you can use that to put check and then put the number here. But if you use QuickBooks Payments, it gets a little tricky because then it tries to process it. Check is one of the ways that it processes it under QuickBooks Payments. So if you have QuickBooks Payments turned on, then don't put check in the box. Don't check it over here. Put it over here in the reference tab. Now back to the deposit option. So again, if you're putting it in the account, one payment at a time, then make sure you check off the account that it's going into. If you're not, and you're putting more than one in together, then you can put it to undeposited funds. And then what it does is it puts it into a holding bucket. So I always tell people, think of it like your drawer on your desk. People don't operate like this no more, but this is how they used to. So someone came in, the check came in the mail, you got the $100, you don't feel like going to the bank, you stuck it in your drawer. Then the next day, maybe you get a payment from a different customer. And again, you don't have time to go to the store on this day. So you take the check for this customer and you put it in your drawer. So now the third day, you have to go to the bank, right? You need to put the money in the bank. But now you have this money, these 2 checks in your drawer. So you go up here to the plus and you click on bank deposit. And this is you opening your drawer. And so all of these payments are sitting in your drawer. So these are the 2 from today and yesterday. These were already in there. And then you check off the ones that you need to deposit and you create a deposit slip for this total amount. And then you go to the bank. That is what this feature, how this feature works. And so then I can say save, and now that deposit is at the bank. The purpose of it is to make sure that the bank deposit of $1860 that shows up on the bank statement is actually what matches your QuickBooks file. If you do not receive checks or if you do not batch your payments, then you don't even have to worry about it. Always make sure that your receive option says the bank, the actual bank name, account that you have in QuickBooks. and you never even have to worry about it. So it basically changes your depositing method from a one-step process to a two-step process. But it's one of the things that we always have to clean up, we always have to fix, because people don't really understand how it works. So that's the undeposited funds feature. If you use QuickBooks Payments with QuickBooks, it will actually do the batching and the depositing for you for those electronic payments, and so you won't even have to do that piece of it. What do you suggest? Should we batch payments? What do you suggest? Should we batch payments and send as one to the bank versus sending in separate payments? It is a complete preference, honestly, because you can do, if you're a person who goes to the bank, then batching is easier because the bank teller wants you to give them one batch of checks. But if you don't go to the bank and you're doing mobile deposit, then you have to do them one at a time, and then they'll show up one at a time. So it won't really be an issue there. So it's really a preference, honestly. It's honestly a user preference. If you're going to be doing the books yourself, you should probably do them one at a time, just so that you don't get confused later, because you're going to forget this part of it later, and you're going to have to go back and watch the video. So I would say if you're doing it yourself, if you have an account, then do the one at a time. If you have an accountant who does it, then they'll know how to do it, and you won't have to worry about it so much. Other transactions that you can do for customers, creating estimates, creating credit memos. So if we need to create an estimate, and you can do these from your mobile device. Again, as you notice, it looks just like the invoice screen, except it says estimate up here in the top left corner. So I would type in the person's name and their information, and we're creating some special service, and here's my estimate, and then I'm going to say, I can save and it'll email them, or I can just save it and print it, or I can just save it because we had the conversation and I just want it out here, right? So once the transaction has happened, the person has approved the estimate, then you can hit the button that says, once it's saved, a button pops up that says create an invoice, right? And if you use purchase orders, there's an option to copy to a purchase order first. But in this instance, we're not going to use purchase orders. We're going to keep it simple. And so I'm going to hit create an invoice. Here's where the progress invoicing comes in. If I want to create an invoice for the entire thing, then I say total of all lines and I create it. If it's something where I'm only billing part of it, so maybe I want to bill a deposit, then I can do create a deposit for 50% or 25%, whatever it is. And then I can create the invoice from there. If I want to create an invoice, if it was more than one line item and I wanted to do it like a portion of this line and a different number from this line, I could do that. But in this instance, I only have the one. I'm going to say 25%, and then it creates an invoice for only the 25% of the invoice. It shows 25% of the total due. It adjusts the quantity to match it, and then I could create it and send it out later. And so super easy to do. You can do this from your mobile device as well. The actual estimate, if you see up here in the left corner, it says one link transaction is the actual estimate. So if I want to go back and look at the estimate, it's showing me that that's linked. So I can click it and then actually go back to the estimate to see the original estimate. When I go to the estimate, now that I've created an invoice, it now shows that it's accepted. And then it shows how much has been invoiced and how much is remaining. And then once the whole thing has billed, it'll show that it was closed out. So super, and this is actually updated since the last time I did this training. So this is actually cool to see the invoice and the remaining side. So really, really smooth, simple process to make everyone's invoicing life a little bit easier. And then if you go to their profile, the customer's profile, you can see the estimate here, the third line down. You can see the invoice that was created and that invoice is open and active. And then if I emailed it out, it would actually show sent next to it. And when they open it, it would show viewed. So again, you can track the progress of your invoicing. For whatever reason, if you need to make a customer inactive, you're not working with them anymore, you can click on their profile and hit make inactive. And it'll say, are you sure? And it puts deleted next to their name, but they're never really deleted. They're just inactive. So don't be discouraged by deleted. The purpose and why I would suggest doing that is, one, because so your customer list isn't super duper long, and two, so that their name doesn't show up when you're entering transactions and you book stuff to them by mistake. That's the real bigger reason. But say later down the line you're going to work with them again. When you come to them in the profile, you just hit make active and everything comes back like normal. So really simple to turn it on and off, if you will. The products and services that you can get to here. This is the back end of your invoicing. You can also get to it by clicking on the gear icon and going under lists. There's products and services there as well. But this is the back end of your invoicing and purchases if you use both sides of that. So I'm going to edit this top one so you can see what it looks like in the back end. So when you're creating an item, you can name it whatever you want. If you use SKUs and pictures, you can. That's really more for people who have inventory. But down here under the pricing, you can see this is where I have it set for $75, because so every time that I type this service, it comes up $75. But if I raise my rates or whatever reason, the service is now $85. Now I can just change it and $85 will come up every time I create an invoice. But this is where you also tell it which account it needs to hit on your profit and loss. So on your profit and loss, you're not going to see this service design, you're going to see design income. And so every time we use this product or this service, it's going to hit this income account. If it's taxable or not, you can tell it so that it automatically calculates or does not. If it's also a service that you purchase or item that you purchase, then you can check the box that says I purchased this also and put in the same kind of information, how much you pay for it when you buy it, and the account for it to hit on your profit and loss as well. And if you have a preferred vendor, you can set the preferred vendor in there too. I'm not going to do that for those. But the great thing about this is that, like I said, if you need to look at your numbers from a more detailed perspective, then this is what's going to help you look at that. So you can kind of look at, like, am I selling more pumps or fountains kind of deal. Expenses. No, sorry, back up. We're going to go to projects. Briefly, I'm just going to touch on it really, really, really briefly. Projects is kind of the same, is an extension of sales. So just like I said, you have sub-customers. You can now turn those into a project so that you can track profitability by project. So I'm not going to go too much in there. I just wanted to, because it's there and I wanted to touch it so you can see it, mention it. It's more of an advanced training, but it does allow you to look at the profit and loss by each project versus, which is a little different from customers because you can now use it to track labor and time against the project as well, which is a big to do. Under expenses, so under expenses, we only have two tabs. We have expenses and then we have vendors. But as you'll see, it kind of looks really similar to the sales one, right? So the expense one is also giving us all of the transactions in an expense cycle, whether it's a credit card, a check, a regular expense, a purchase order, a bill payment. It all shows up here in one screen, and you can filter it to look at it any kind of way that you kind of want to see it. And then when I click on vendors, I get a vendor list just like the customer list. I have a money bar across the top. So instead of invoices, it's telling me purchase orders and bills that are due and overdue. The functionality is the same. Instead of saying create an invoice, it says create a bill. So to the vendor profile, it says a new customer, it says new vendor, right? So if I click on new vendor, I put in all of their information. They don't have as many tabs or any tabs as the customer profile does, but you can put in additional information. You can attach 1099 W-9s or contracts here as well if you want to have them in their profile. You can put in their billing rate. So if you're tracking time and billing it back, the rate is already pre-populated. One of the questions people always ask me is about vendors is, do I put them in as employees or as subcontractors, do I put them in as employees or vendors? And the answer is vendors. If you pay subcontractors, they are vendors. They are not employees. And so they go into the vendor tab. So what you need to make sure you do is click this button at the bottom that says track payments for 1099s. And what that is going to do is throw them into the contractor field so that you can get their information later. So I'm going to check that box. I'm creating a new person. Hold on, let's put in a new person. It does have the ability to populate an address based off of the name of a company that you put in. I think it's called geofencing or something like that. You don't have to use it, but it is there. All right, so once I put in the company name and then the person's name, now I can tell it to show up in my list as a company or as a name. So you can choose how you see it in your list. Put in all the rest of their information. I'm going to check the box that says track payments for 1099, and I'll show you why. So once I check that box, that person now, if I go over to workers, there's two tabs, employees and contractors. And when I click on the contractor tab, that company now appears there as a contractor. So that you know, even though there's someone you pay, they're not an employee and they're not under the employees tab. And then when you, one of the newest features, and I actually just wrote a blog about it, so it should be live tomorrow, might be live now, where I walk through the process of how you can actually have this contractor put in their information themselves by clicking the add a contractor button and then sending them an email and saying, hey, can you put your information in for me? So one of the things I tell people is always get a W-9 first. So basically it'll send them an email. They put in their address, their federal ID number, all of that, and it creates a signed W-9 that they get a copy of and you get a copy of. So you don't have to try to get that information later. Again, I just wrote a blog about that for this week, so you could probably check that out. Really cool, slick process. Like, I like it a lot. It's really good. And then at the end of the year, if you want to issue 1099s, then you can hit this prepare 1099 buttons, and it'll walk you through an interview process of how to prepare the 1099s, making sure that you have all the information you need to actually send them out. You can print them on, you can print the contractor's copies on regular paper, but then the copies that go to the government have to be on the red copies, I think, still. We don't use this feature. We actually use an app that integrates. So it does it e-files it for us. But you can send them out. You do need to have the plus, at least the plus version to do the 1099s. And it is an extra fee if you want QuickBooks to e-file them for you. But it is there and then it's available. All right, we're going to go back over here to expenses and vendors. Next to any of the vendors, there's a little arrow. Again, like you can create a bill, create an expense, write a check, purchase order, the same options that are up here under the plus, under the vendors tab, right? So like I said, 2 ways to do everything, at least 2 ways to do everything. When you're creating a bill for someone, again, looks just like the invoicing, right? Except it says bill at the top, right? And then you still have your recent transactions next to it. So they make it, this is what I mean by it's so easy to use and so user-friendly. So each screen looks similar, so you don't have to try to figure out how to navigate on a whole new screen, right? You have it all here for you. So on the bill side, instead of products and services, you are coding straight to, you can code straight to a profit and loss expense item by selecting the category here. I'm gonna, because this is a burger joint, I'm gonna put meals and entertainment. How much did we spend? If it was something that I needed to bill back to the client, then I would check this box so that when I type, and then if you check the billable box, you also have to put the customer's name next to it so that it knows who customer to attach it to when you're trying to create an invoice. If you do use the products and services the same way we did on the invoice, then you can actually set it up and use the items instead of the categories. I find, depending on the industry, and you will use those. So some industries won't. Most service-based industries don't use that. But if you're in a retail or a construction space, then you might use the inventory details. I mean, the item details. So once the category is created, I'm saying that it's billable. I can attach the receipt here. I can actually drag and drop it here if it's something that's on my computer and emailed. But if you have the mobile app, you can upload it straight from your mobile device. And so now I can say save. So because I marked this billable to Bill's Windsurf Shop, right? If I go back over here to sales and then go to customers and then create an invoice for Bill's Windsurf Shop, you see the expense over here pops up. So if I need to add it to the next invoice, I can add it to the next invoice. Really, really simple, easy to do. All right. We're kind of ahead here, so we might get to some other stuff at the end. I don't go over payroll and employees too much in this session just because it's so much more. It's like a whole session by itself. But do know that you can have payroll. You can add on payroll as a feature. It is an extra fee on top of the subscription that you already pay for QuickBooks Online. You will have to pay a separate payroll fee to have payroll, and those rates are in the slides. When we go back to the slides at the end, I'll show you those rates. But it is available and as an option. They recently rolled out one-day funding, so if your payday is tomorrow, you can process payroll as late as the day before, which nobody else is doing. So that's a game changer for a lot of people, especially when you're considering cash and the availability of cash to run payroll. That's a huge, huge thing. But you can do payroll taxes. They do have the ability they have different versions. They have a version where you file the forms. You process payroll, they calculate the taxes, but you have to push the button to pay the taxes and push the button to file the forms. And then they have a version where you process the payroll and then they do everything else for you. My recommendation, let them do everything else for you. Whether you use QuickBooks Payroll, whether you use Gusto, whether you use ADP, Paychex, whoever you use, let them be the process of filing the forms and paying the taxes to make sure that they get paid. It's just easier that way. All right, taxes. So the sample company doesn't have the updated version, but it's actually going to show up as 2 tabs where you have sales tax. So if you charge sales tax, QuickBooks Online will track your sales tax for you and then give you the ability to create a payment to send to the agency that you need to send it to. In the newer version, you will have sales tax tab and a payroll tax tab so that you can track the taxes that get paid and the forms that get filed if you have the payroll service. The mileage tracker is new to this edition, but this is what it looks like. So basically you have to download the mobile app on your phone and it will track your every move. And it'll store it here in the QuickBooks Online file for you so that you have it for your year-end tax filings. If you need to add a trip manually, there is an add trip button here where you can put in the date and how far you drove. You can put a starting and end point if you want, as far as like an address. The purpose, business meeting. You do have to have your vehicle already saved in here as well, but it'll track the miles. And once you save it, it shows you this report. So really, really cool. When they had it in the self-employed, I was like, why don't they put it in the other ones? And I guess they had to, just because it's on a different platform, they had to rebuild it a little bit. And so now it's on all the versions and it does run on your mobile device. Awesome feature. Comparing the fees charged by QuickBooks for payroll versus other payroll vendors What do you suggest, especially for startups? I actually suggest Gusto, and I'll have a link for that sent to you at the end of the session. That's the app that we use. It's a little cheaper than QuickBooks Online, and it kind of depends. It does integrate with QuickBooks Online. It's a complete integration, so you process payroll over there. It pushes over to QuickBooks automatically. It just becomes a case of, do you want to have two apps or one? Some people like the all-in-one option, and so even though Gusto is easier to use, and at one point had better features, but QuickBooks Online is very competitive, and so they've rolled out some new stuff, like the paying the contractors is new, self-onboarding is new. So they're making it competitive so that you stay with them, but their rates are a little bit higher for an initial startup. But like I said, when I send you at the end of the session, sometime between the time that this class ends and tomorrow, you'll get an email with links to all of these apps that I'm talking about, including a link to purchase QuickBooks Online. And so you can check out all of these things for yourself and compare. But it really boils down to what you want to use and how flexible you want to be. For our clients, we kind of pick for them, because it's the way we operate. But you can choose on your own if you're not working with someone already. All right, there is an accounting tab. That's where you access your chart of accounts and reconciliations. My Accountant gives you the ability to communicate with your accountant. So if an accountant was set up here, your accountant can actually send you requests directly through QuickBooks, and you can respond directly through QuickBooks, which including sending documents. So it's kind of cool there as well. The capital feature is QuickBooks now offers funding, so you can check into that if you're interested as well. I'm going to come back to banking, and then we're going to do reports. So banking is where you're going to spend 90% of your time is going to be on this tab, because you're going to be trying to record transactions, post transactions, see what cleared, and so forth. So this is how the banking works. This is what you might hear referred to as the bank feeds, the FEEDS. So if there's 3 tabs, there's banking, there's rules, which operate kind of like the recurring transaction, where you can tell QuickBooks every time something comes in coded here. So every time you see Exxon, I want you to put it to gas expense. Like, you can set that up so that it automatically happens. Can't do that in desktop. And then there's a receipts tab, which is their newest feature that they rolled out. So you can definitely do the mobile uploading of receipts from your phone. But now they have it where if you want to email a receipt to QuickBooks, you can. You have to register your email account. Your email account only gets connected to your file. That's some tech stuff that they figured out how to do in the back end. And then after you do that, you can actually, every time you forward an email to a certain email address from your email, it will come into your QuickBooks file, and then you can use that to create your transactions as well. It's a great feature. It's, again, they're competing with other apps that we use that do the exact same thing. All right, ignore the pop-ups. So once you're on the banking tab, you can connect your bank account by clicking on this green button that says Add Account on the right. Most banks throughout the United States are in here, no matter how big or small they are. So whether you want to bank with a big bank like PNC, they pop up. If you bank with a credit union, I'm just going to type credit union, and you'll see you get a whole list of credit unions throughout the United States. So if you bank with a small local bank, this is a bank that I know in Virginia. That's a small bank, only to companies in Fairfax County. They're in the list. So most banks are in here. So to connect your bank account for the very first time, you'll type in your bank. It'll take you to a page for your login credentials. So this is a trial, so it's not going to work. But you'll type in your login credentials. You may have to answer your verification questions, you know, who's your best friend when you're in the third grade kind of questions. And then once it's connected, it'll say, the very first time it'll ask you how far back do you want it to pull transactions. It used to only go back 90 days for the first time, but now I think it actually goes back further than that. So you pick the date that you want it to start importing, and then it'll go out and grab everything that has posted to your account from that day forward. And then moving forward, it will do it every night. So this is the bucket that it drops it in. So if you remember on our dashboard over here on the right, we had our bank accounts and they had the blue hyperlinks that I said, these are our buckets and these are the transactions that we need to review. So to review them, you can click on the button here, or you can go over here to banking and hit banking. So it takes you to the screen. This is the bucket where it drops everything in. So at the top of your screen, you have all of the accounts that are connected, right? Whichever one you want is highlighted in blue. The top half of that box is your actual bank balance as of whatever date it says. So this one says updated moments ago. If it was 2 days ago, it would say as of 2 days ago. So whatever date it is. And then the white section of that box is your balance in QuickBooks at that point in time based off all the transactions that have been recorded. The limber next to it is everything that's at the bottom of your screen that needs to be addressed. In some instances, they need to be recorded. In some instances, they just need to be matched to stuff that's already recorded. So you'll see that this checking account has 25 transactions that need our attention. And so if I scroll down a little bit, these are our transactions. So the ones that have the ones that to do the easiest first are the ones that have this little green box that says record found. So if the transaction is already in recorded because you already previously recorded it, because you already uploaded the receipt, because you already recorded the payment, whatever the case may be, QuickBooks is going to go out and try to grab it. And it looks for date, amount, and name. So in this instance, Hicks Hardware, it downloaded from the bank that it cleared the bank. QuickBooks went out and saw a check to Hicks Hardware for the same amount for that date or earlier. If it's after that date, it won't match it. But if it's that date or soon or prior, it will pop up as a match. And so I look at it, I'm like, hey, yep, that's right. I hit match. So I'm not recording it again. It's kind of like a tick and a tie, right? Like it's like check, it's here. Yep, it's there. Same for PG&E. When I click it, a little box drops down just to show me the transaction that it matched to. I do recommend doing that the first few times. And I also recommend doing that when you have things that are for the same amount, just to make sure it's matching to the right one, which I'm going to show you in a second. So I'm saying, yep, that's the same match. If I have gone through and I'm like, yep, these are all correct, I can actually place a check mark by more than one item, come up here to batch and hit accept and add them all at the same time. And then they're all, that's to save me time so that I don't have to do one by one, right? Now you'll notice that this one, instead of it being a green button with white letters, it's a white button with green letters, and it says that there are 2 transactions. So when it went out, it found 2 transactions for that date, for that amount, but to 2 different names. So it doesn't know which one is right. So when I click on it, the box drops down and I can say, oh, it came through from the bank. So the bank detail is how it's set up on the bank side. That's the information that comes from the bank that tells me that, oh, this is the payment from Pam or to Pam. So it matches to this first one, not this second one. And so now I can say match for that one. And so you can go through this process of matching or doing them in batches or doing them individually to make your life a little bit easier. If for whatever reason something is in there already and it's already matched and it's not working, you can exclude it by putting a check mark beside it and hitting exclude. If you hit exclude by mistake, if I scroll up just a little bit underneath my boxes, you see for review, reviewed, which is everything that we've already matched, and excluded is everything that we've excluded. Because I did that in error, I can hit the undo button next to it and it puts it back on my review tab. Now, So those are the things that are already in. So the first time you do it, there's not going to be anything in there, right? And you're going to be like, how do I tell QuickBooks where all this stuff goes? Everything is going to say uncategorized income or uncategorized expense. And so what you do is you click on the item. So I'm clicking on this first one that says A rental for $1,200. And I'm going to type A rental as the vendor. A rental isn't in my list. So you see as I start to type, the list drops down and it tries to find the name. A rental is not in my vendor or customer list, but I can add it right here on the fly as either or. So this is somebody I pay. This is an expense, the vendor. So I'm saving it. You'll notice that it put it next to this expense and the one underneath it because it's also an A rental expense. Now I want to tell it that this expense should be equipment rental. And you'll notice that when I code it to one, it coded it to the other. And so now I can check them both off and batch them and accept them together. Now you may be asking, but what about that third one? It didn't do that one because that one's a deposit. And so it was only matching up things on the expense side. But for true accounting fashion, if this was a deposit, that means I probably got a refund back for something. Looks like it was a deposit refund. So I can still say that it's a rental because that's where it came from, even though it's a vendor. And then I'm just going to reduce my equipment rental fee because I didn't have to pay that $200 I gave it back. And so it's recording. And so what it's going to do over time, same thing with Books by Bessie. Books by Bessie is my accountant. I need to charge, she's giving me money back too, I guess. And so I'm going to code her to accounting. So she gave me a refund for something. I ain't complaining. Let's get that booked. But down here is where I paid her. So maybe I overpaid her. Accounting. And so what happens is you notice as I saved it, if you noticed, I don't know if you saw it, but down here, this transaction highlighted a little bit, it kind of lit up. Because QuickBooks says, oh, Books by Bessie is an expense, means it's counting. So it automatically changed the name of the category. And so the more that you do it, the more that it will do that for you. So it learns your habits. So when you get to the point where when things download, they no longer say uncategorized. Never book those to uncategorized, by the way. Always pick a name and a category. But it will pre-populate with the name and the category. And so now all I have to do is go through and add it. I no longer have to edit that transaction per se. Same with these. Always make sure you put a name because in your reports, if you leave this blank, when you look at let's just say that this is a materials transaction, right? So if I leave this name blank, when I run a report of my materials, all I'm going to see is a bunch of numbers. I'm not going to see who the vendors were. So always put the vendor name there so that when you run your reports, you can actually see who you're paying because you will need that information. And so that's how the bank feeds work. Now, again, on the review tab, if I did something by mistake, then I can just always come over here and hit undo and it throws it back over there. It's the only option of undo that you get. The goal is to get every transaction to the point where this number is gone. So once I match all the transactions, it says all done. And so everything is up to date to that point. And now I can look at reports and financial data in a real-time capacity because it's all up to date. This is a credit card. So here's where you would connect your checking account, your savings account, payroll accounts, credit cards, your PayPal account. This is where I said when I mentioned that you can connect your PayPal as a bank. This is how you would do it. You would hit add account and then come over here to PayPal, and just like you would do a bank, you would connect it and it will pull it in. Connecting PayPal, it will, because you know PayPal does the whole transfer thing. So we'll also create a PayPal transfer account so that money can go into the transfer and out of the transfer. It can get a little confusing, so if you need assistance, then make sure you check with your accountant on how to keep it all straight because it can get a little confusing. Every now and again, you might log in and see this box with the blue line around it? It might be a box with a red line around it. So every now and then connections break, banks want you to refresh your password, or they want you to retype in your security question answer, there's usually a little hyperlink that just takes you right to that step in that process. So really simple and easy to do. But just notice, so if you see an exclamation mark instead of a number, that's usually the case, that you need to update something with your bank feeds. And it will go back out up to the last date that it downloaded and download everything that it didn't. Now, if the connection is broke for too long, like say 3 months, then you risk the chance that the missing data won't pre-populate and you'll have to go out and import it. Or manually key it in separately. So try to log in at least once a week, I would say. If you're going to be doing it yourself, I would say set aside a time on your calendar, at least at a minimum once a month, that you come in and do all of this stuff instead of waiting until the end of the year. If you can do it weekly, great. If you can't, once a month, like I do the first Saturday of every month is when I do my own books, because all of the rest of the month I'm doing everybody else's books. And so that way my stuff isn't too far behind either. I actually do it more recently than that, but when I initially started, that was the day that I set aside. But because I'm in here and I can switch back and forth between clients, I can come in and update my stuff at any time. So that's the banking feature. Again, this is where you would spend 90% of your time. If you come in and this says, there's no exclamation point, but it might say, updated 30 days ago, but for whatever reason it didn't go out and refresh, then you can just hit this update button and then it'll actually go out to your bank and you'll see the numbers will start spinning and it'll re-download the information. In that case, the connection isn't broke, just for whatever reason it didn't go out and do it. Does happen, not often, but it does happen. From here, you can also view the actual register at any time by going over here to the far right where it says go to register, and it'll actually take you to a formal check register that shows you all of the transactions in that file, in that account. And you can toggle at the top between any balance sheet account to see any list of transactions that are in there. Questions? No questions? All right. That means I'm doing a really good job, I hope. Alrighty. So that's projects. Reports. So as a business owner, you should know how to run reports. Balance sheet and profit and loss at a minimum. Depending on which version of QuickBooks you have, you get different sets of reports. Obviously, the lower the version, the fewer reports you get. The higher the version, the more reports you get. Some reports will default under favorites. These are the ones that most people run most of the time. Accounts receivable, balance sheet, profit and loss. But if you scroll down, you will see that there's categories for other types of reports. So who owes you, which includes receivables types of reports. Sales, which shows you sales by customer, sales by items, sales by list, summaries, details, inventory, all of these items. So when I mentioned the products and services, there's a report here that says sales by product and service summary. So if I click that, it actually shows me reports based off whatever date range I put in. It shows me all of the items I sold by item. So on my profit and loss, it just says income. But on this report, I can break that income number down into what I actually sold. So when you're trying to look at how your business is doing and performing, this report is very, very helpful. It gives you the nuts and bolts of what's going on. So we're going to go back to reports. What you owe. So these are your vendors, who you owe, your accounts payable, contractors. Expenses and vendors are things that are paid but not through bill pay. So the accounts payable cycle is you get a bill, you wait 15 with the terms on it. Pay in 15 days, pay in 30 days. The expense transactions are things that happen immediate. So these are your subscription services, things that you purchase on your debit card. They happen right then and there. Purchase on a credit card. Then there's checks, which obviously you wrote a check and mailed it out. So those are the different expense categories that you will see and that you can pull up reports from There are sales tax reports if you have that feature turned on. Employee and payroll reports, I think, are separate. So there's employees, and if I scroll down a little bit further, there's payroll. You won't see for my accountant unless you're an accountant, because those are the reports that we can run separately. Some of them are duplicative of what you run, and then a couple are extra. So one of the things I want you to notice, when you run a report, you can customize that report any way, shape, or form. So I'm running a profit and loss. This is a profit and loss from January to November. We made only $4,700. But we're still profiting. We're still in the black, right? So we are profiting $1,700. So we're doing something still right. But if I wanted to customize this report in any way, shape, or form, like maybe I don't want to see the things that have zeros. Maybe I want to add percentage of income. And so I check those options and hit run report. Now I have this new report that I've created, and then I can save this report so that next month I don't have to customize it again. So I can save, and I can say, rename it. And it says successfully saved. And so when I go back to my reports, and then this second, so there's a standard, which is all of the reports that come with the QuickBooks file. And then custom is the report that I created. And so this report is the one that I created. So now each time I want it, I can just come in here and click it and change the dates. I don't have to customize it anymore. So, and that you can do with any of the reports in here. So you can actually create like a whole book of reports, like a workbook of 5 or 6 reports that automatically go out to your team, your management team, your investor, your banker, whoever you need it to go to. You can actually have it set up that way. So very, very, very helpful. All right, so we're gonna pause the demo and we're gonna jump back into the PowerPoint. And go over a few other things. We're kind of ahead here, so if you have questions at the end, definitely feel free to ask. We can have a longer Q&A if need be, and then I might be able to go back and show you a couple other things that we didn't get to go over. Expanded functionality. So these are some best practices and tips in using QuickBooks Online. As far as a browser goes, Google Chrome is the preferred browser. So it's built on Chrome, so it works better on Chrome. I don't think anybody uses Explorer anymore, but if you use Edge or Firefox, it will work, but it functions better in the Chrome browser setting. One of the cool things about using Google Chrome is that you can have 2 profiles under Chrome. So if I switch back real quick, that's not the right screen. So up here, if you can see, it's my picture. When I click it, I actually have another profile. So I can actually open up 2 profiles and have 2 different instances of the same QuickBooks Online file. That's the only way you can have the same file open in the browser, in 2 separate browsers. You can duplicate a screen. So if I right click the tab, I can duplicate it. So if I want to see the same, if I want to be in the same file but look at 2 separate things, then I can duplicate the screen and click on the 2 different tabs. So each tab shows me something different. Because it is a web browser, it does refresh. So if you do something on one screen and save it, the other screen will refresh. If I want to open up 2 separate companies, 2 completely separate companies, then I have to use my 2 Chrome users, open them up individually, and then open one company in one browser and another company in another browser. So that's what the Chrome person means. And the 2 companies at once, the duplicate tabs. Because it is in a browser environment, you can use the back arrow to navigate and to go back. Going back doesn't necessarily change. Like if you did something and saved it, it still is saved, but you can use the back arrow to get back to another screen. You know, whenever things are acting glitchy and funky and not cooperating, you can always clear your browser history and your cookies. I'm a rebel against that option because I have so many things saved. that I use and access, but it is the recommendation if things are acting a little wonky. This is the pricing for the payroll add-on. So for QuickBooks Online Payroll, note that QuickBooks Online has several payroll products. These are the pricings for the QuickBooks Online Payroll, which is the one that's inside of QuickBooks Online. They also have Intuit Online Payroll, which is outside of QuickBooks Online, but still integrates. But these are the prices for the one that's inside of QuickBooks. It's kind of an all-in-one. Self-service means that you process it, you pay the form taxes, you file the forms. Full service means you process it, they file the taxes, they file the the forms. These are the prices. These prices are actually going up really soon. So if you do need to have payroll and as an option, know that these prices are subject to change within the next 60 to 90 days. The line, just like with the subscription fees, the amount with the line is the regular price, and that's the sale price. Again, that's the sale price or the price if you go through a QuickBooks Pro Advisor. Because our pricing is usually 50% off what we can offer. It is a subscription service as well, so you do pay this at a monthly fee. And these say per month plus employee. There's also a per state fee. So if you have more than one state, you have to pay a fee for the additional states on top of it. So for a lot of us in Maryland, DC, Virginia, if you have to file payroll tax, if you have employees who live in Maryland, DC, and Virginia, then your home state is Maryland, then you will have to pay an extra fee for them to do the filings for DC and Virginia. Apps. So I've mentioned quite a few apps. Here are some of our favorite apps that we use. You can search any apps on apps.intuit.com. Even if you type apps.com, it still goes to this URL. And basically, it's a hub where all of the apps that QuickBooks has stamped and approved are on there that can be used with their platform or on there. So if you find an app and you go to this website and they're not there, then QuickBooks doesn't recommend it. And they have a very stringent policy or process around getting apps into their ecosystem. So I would be a little bit leery of an app that's not on there, that you may have some glitches and issues and functionality problems. But if they're on there, then this is a good list. These are just some of the ones that we use. 17 Hats is a proposal system, and it's more of an operational management system. It was designed for solopreneurs who wear 17 hats, right? And it literally has 17 different things in it that you can do. We use it for proposals and workflow, but you can use it for invoicing, and it integrates with, I think, PayPal and Square, or Square and Stripe, Square and something. So it does a little bit more things than we use it for, but I like their proposal feature, so that's what we use it for. Square, which we talked about. T-Sheets is a time tracking system which they've actually purchased, and so it's actually embedded into the application now. Receipt Bank does receipt management. Builder, Trend, and Notifier construction apps. Live Plan is a business plan app. We talked about PayPal. Bill.com is a bill pay app. Shopify is an e-commerce system. Expensify is an expense management system. And these are just a small list of all the apps that you can integrate with QuickBooks Online. And so if you can, there are CRM systems out there. There are other inventory management systems. So if you do have inventory, you can actually use a third-party app to do your inventory so that you keep your inventory system the way it is, and then just connect it to QuickBooks Online to pull in the summary data. So you don't necessarily have to have the plus for that, I don't believe. I think you can have Essential, because at that point, everything is done in your other app. So some of these apps are free, some have fees, so you just have to be mindful of that when you're choosing an app as well. As I mentioned, there is a desktop app if somebody feels obligated to be on a desktop and download something. but you really don't have to. You can just use the online option and it works great. If you are on desktop and you need to convert, so you're on desktop, you're ready to jump ship, I would definitely say consult with a pro advisor first. There are a series of steps that need to be done and handled in your QuickBooks desktop file first before it converts, to ensure that everything comes over and everything comes over correctly. So I would definitely say work with a pro advisor first to get before you actually start the conversion. The conversion is fairly simple though, that once a file is created, there's literally an option inside of your desktop file that says export, and the system will do it for you. Like I said, there's just a bunch of steps that have to happen first. The conversion time takes anywhere from, I've seen them as short as 10 minutes and as long as 30 minutes. It just depends how big your QuickBooks desktop file is. But it is a relatively quick and easy and simple process. All right, so next steps, some resource guides. Again, you're gonna get a copy of this so you don't have to screenshot it and you don't have to try to hurry up and write this down. The first option is QuickBooks is a resource guide that they've created with some tips and best practices and things on how to navigate your file. If you need additional support, you can reach out to us directly, and we offer, like I said, we do outsourced accounting and bookkeeping services on an ongoing basis for clients with their back office accounting department. But if you feel like you're not quite ready to outsource completely and you just need some assistance and some guidance, we do offer consulting packages where we do one-on-one trainings and implementations. And if you haven't purchased it yet, because I know some of you said you're kind of new and were thinking about purchasing it, that is my direct link, affiliate link, to get you set up and inside of the QuickBooks Online at our discounted rate, which I believe currently is 50% off, but I have to look into that, so don't quote me on it just yet. But I do. And so that's pretty much what we got. We are way ahead of schedule. And I'm trying to think, I don't know how we're so far ahead of schedule. We're usually going over. If you want to get in contact with me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram. Feel free to shoot me a message if you have any additional questions. I'm actually going to jump over to my email because someone sent me an email this morning and they had a question. Let me find the question. Their question was a little specific, so I won't say their name, but their question was, how do they record expenses for a partner who paid for the expenses, I'm assuming out of pocket, and turned in some receipts? They currently have recorded under the expense category such as office expense and as paid to the partner as a vendor. Is that correct? It's sort of correct. So when you pay for things out of pocket, so I'm going to go back to the demo. When you pay for expenses out of pocket, the question becomes, how do I get those recorded, right? Because you have your bank accounts connected in here, your business accounts, but you do not want to connect your personal accounts. Like, just don't do it. So how do you record things that you pay for out of your personal account or that you pay for out of your pocket? The answer is through a journal entry. This is the only time you're allowed to do a journal entry. Other than this, never do a journal entry. And so a journal entry is basically the back end of all the other stuff that we went through, right? It's what happens when you create an invoice. It creates a journal entry in the background. So the journal entry is the background of all of these transactions. So what you would do is you would put the account, like you said, to the category would be the debit. So whether it was office expense, gas expense, whatever you paid for would go into the debit column. And in the description, you can type what they paid for, right? Maybe they bought a desk, maybe they bought an office chair. Something that would be $50. Right? And then for the credit, in this instance, you would put it to this. It's not set up in this account in this sample company. But you would put it to a owner's contribution account to record, and let's just say number 1, because maybe there's 2 people in the company, right? Just like with accounts, we can create this on the fly, just like we can with customer and vendor names. And so this person, it gets booked as a credit. And then your tax accountant or your bookkeeper or whoever will close it out at the end of the year. But this is a way to track all of things. You can attach a copy of the receipt here, just like you can on with other transactions, so that you have a copy of what they actually purchased. And then you save it. So that's how you would do that. So I hope you're on the call and you caught that. Oh, that's you typing. Yep, I got it. So that's how you do that. All right, let me see if we have any other questions that snuck through. For owner's draw, would that be the same as a journal entry or check? If it's a draw out of the business account, then you can record it straight as an expense. So if it comes through the bank fee because you took it out of the business account, and we're just going to pick one of these and say that's what it is. Like, I'm just going to say that this is it, just for the sake of demonstration. So for an owner's draw, what I typically tell people is so that you're not creating yourself as a vendor. So that was part of his questions also, like, should he be a vendor? He technically is not a vendor because he's the owner of the company, right? But when you're creating transactions, it doesn't give you an option. That is one thing that QuickBooks Desktop does have. It has an other category for people who are not vendors or customers or employees. And this version online doesn't have that. So what I typically do is I do it as a transfer instead. So there is a record a transfer option. So when you click on a transaction through the bank fee and it drops down, you can add it, which means it's not in here anywhere. You can find a match. So if you think it's in there, it can go out and try to find the transaction for you, or you can do it as a transfer. So for actual bank transfers, and when owners take draws, I use the record a transfer option so that I don't have to put in that person's name as a vendor. And so in here, you would just select for the account, you would just select the owner's distribution account, which is not set up in this sample company either, but that's okay because we can create it real quickly. And again, this is just for demonstration. Ignore that this says Chin's Gas. So now I have a partner's contribution. So I record them as a transfer so that I don't have to put a name. If it hasn't come through the bank feed yet, and you just want to kind of get ahead of the transaction, then up here on the plus, there is a transfer option, and you can do the transfer here. So I can say transfer from the checking account, partner distribution. We took $500, and in the memo I can put owner draw or owner distribution, right? So that, again, so you're not adding the person's name as a vendor when they're not really a vendor. Now, if you physically wrote a check, that's if they do withdrawals, because they tend to do that. But if you physically wrote a check, then you would just click the plus and do a check and write a check to their name. So what I try to do is, so that they're not listed as a vendor because they're not a vendor, I go over to the workers tab and on employees, and I create that person as an employee. So you can add people as employees, even though you're using a different payroll system, so that you're not putting them in as vendors when they're not vendors. Because remember, the name has to be unique across employees, vendors, and customers. So to make sure they're in the right category, you can still add their name here and not be using their payroll feature. So I would add the name here first and then go in and do a check so that they're in the right category. You're welcome. You're welcome. So should we have 2 sub-accounts under equity? Yes. So should we have 2 sub-accounts under equity? One is partners and one is contributions and one is distributions? Yes, you should. So I created these on the fly. So you can have one account that says owner's equity and then make both of these sub-accounts of that one account, or you can leave them the way they are here. It depends on if they're set up as a partnership or a corporation. So if you're a small corporation, then you should have it all gets closed out to retained earnings. But if you are a partnership or an LLC, then there should be an overarching owner's equity account that these get closed out into. You are welcome. You are welcome. Any other questions? Like I said, oh, you know what? I can show you. Let me see. I said I was going to show you guys the mobile view. The at the end of the present, once we're done, you do get a copy of the slides portion as a PDF. As long as the recording comes out clear, I am going to put it on. It's actually going to be on YouTube, and I can send you the link for it if it comes out clear. Cross your fingers. Can I comment on Gusto? Sure. What would you like me to say about Gusto? I love Gusto. It's utility. What do you mean? Like, how does it function? How does it work? How does it? I'm assuming that's what you mean. It's very user-friendly. It makes payroll really simple and easy, like a 1, 2, 3 step process. Originally, we signed up for it because it did pay vendors. It did pay subcontractors, whereas at first QuickBooks did not pay subcontractors and through direct deposit. So QuickBooks Online now has the ability where you can add your contractors so they can self-onboard, and employees can self-onboard. That was like a big feature why we chose Gusto. Self-onboarding means I put in their name, address, and email and their job title, and then they get an email that says finish putting in the rest of your information. So they put in their bank information, their addresses, fill out their W-4s. It's all done electronically. So we don't have to send out papers and try to get papers back and scanning and all of that. It's just too much. And then we can pay contractors direct deposit as well. So all of our vendors are paid through Gusto so that they get direct deposit. So I'm not paying people through PayPal because I only want one way to do things. I don't want to be doing 45 different apps because I have 45 different vendors. So it's the way for us to operate efficiently is that we pay through that. And then Gusto will issue the 1099s at the end of the year automatically, and it's included in the fee that you already pay. So with QuickBooks, when you pay the fee, when you pay the sign up for the 1099s at the end, you do have to pay a fee, extra fee on top of it. So those are the reasons why we chose with Gusto, and we've been with them for so long now, we just haven't switched. So there's now that QuickBooks Online has all these extra features that we could pick and choose. Had they had these features in the beginning, we probably would have chose it because it's an all-in-one solution. But at the moment, because we're already using it, we're just going to keep using it. So I hope that answers your questions. So I'm going to actually show you, I hope this comes through. So this is my cell phone. Ignore all my notifications. So this is my cell phone. And so when I click on QuickBooks Online, this is a sample company that I have already created in here. So this is what it looks like. On the home screen, it shows like deposits. It shows you invoicing. You can actually do all of this stuff on the go. I can see the banking. I can see transactions and things. and how many transactions I need to address. So it's telling me that I have 76 transactions that I need to view. And so from, you know, if you're on the go and you don't have your computer, you can actually record transactions straight from here. Because it's green, this green one means that it's already pre-populated what it thinks this expense is. And so I can accept it by just swiping to the right. This one is gray at the top, so it's guessing what it might be. But I can come in here and actually code it to what it's supposed to be. Right? And then if I had the receipt, I could actually attach the receipt as well. So I'm just gonna hit, I coded it, and then I can hit accept, and then it goes right to the next one, right? If I have a receipt in my hand and I need to record it, then I can go up here to receipt capture, and then I can take a picture. I don't have a receipt here, but that's my computer keyboard. And so if this was a real receipt, it would take the picture of the receipt and upload it, and I would have to code it. Unfortunately, I have no paper receipts nowhere near me. The mileage tracker is in here as well, so it's tracking all of my whereabouts. If I need to send in customers, so this is the customer module. So there's a little plus down here at the bottom left corner. So you see right here, bottom right corner, sorry. So you click the plus, and I can create the customer right here on the fly, right? And then when I'm ready to send an invoice, I just pick a customer, and I can click the plus, and I can create an estimate, a sales receipt, or an invoice, and do it right here in the field. So you're not left having to go back to your office, or I'm going to do it later, and then you get busy and you can forget. You can do it right here at this moment in time. So I'm creating this invoice. I'm going to add a line item for bookkeeping, and it's $500, and I can save it. And then there's the invoice. So now the invoice is there, and it shows that it was created, and then I can hit send, and it'll, if I have the person's email address, I can send them the email, but then you can see the template of the email here, in here, whoops. And then if I scroll down, you can see my customized invoice with the logo that didn't work earlier. So that's exactly what the invoice looks like that the person will get. So really, really, really cool. Really, really cool. And then, so I'm going to actually put in an email address. So that Cheryl at Nitro Financial, and then I'm going to hit send. So you can see the tracking. So now you can see it shows that it was sent. And over here on my other screen, I'm going to actually open the invoice. And so now that I've opened the invoice, if I come back out and then come back in, now it says that I viewed it. So you can actually see, so people can no longer say, hey, I didn't get that invoice. Well, I see that you opened it. So somebody got it, right? So, and then once it's paid, it'll go to paid and deposited and so forth. So this is how the mobile app works. It's really, really, really simple and easy to use. They've recently updated it, so it looks a little different, but it's very simple and very easy to use. And if you have more than one, so this is something I didn't mention before. If you have more than one account, so you have more than one business, you do need to have more than one QuickBooks Online account. Do not have them in the same account. You need to have them in separate accounts. And if you do have more than one account, so in your QuickBooks Online file, under here over the gear, you would actually have the option to switch between them over here really quickly. On the mobile device, there's an option in the settings where you can, see here where it says switch company. So I can switch between companies that way. So still easy to use. So, so that's how that looks. Alrighty. Cost of Gusto compared to QuickBooks Online. Gusto is, they have 3 different tiers. They have, it's a $36 base fee plus a per person fee, depending on what version you have. That ranges from $6 to I think $24. QuickBooks Online regular fee is $100 plus $4 per person, and I think $12 per state. If you go through a pro advisor, it's cheaper than that. If you go through a pro advisor, like 35 to 50% off. So it just depends. Again, I say pick it based off of, do you want to do it all in one? Do you want an all-in-one solution, or do you want it, you can have the integration, but some people choose it because it's all in one. Thank you much for your information. You're great. Real quick. At the end of this, you're going to get an email from the Small Business Development Center to submit a survey. That's part of their requirements. And so once you get the survey, then you'll get the everything else. So be sure to submit the surveys, because they kind of need them to help continue to do these classes for business owners. I didn't give them their little plug at the beginning is, the Small Business Development Center offers free and low cost training for business owners. They're located all throughout the state, all throughout the country. So feel free to reach out to them for any types of assistance. They provide counseling and services and consulting services as well. So if you need help on how to get a business started, or trying to find accountants and lawyers and anything else, getting certified to do business with the government, they can help you with all of that. So definitely reach out to them. And the way that they do that is they get their funding from the SBA, and so they need these surveys to be able to do that. So please do submit the surveys. Plus, they give the surveys to me so that I can know how great or awful I am. So if you need more assistance if you would like more assistance from me, then definitely reach out to me and send me an email and let me know, and we can schedule time to chat and see how we can support you. I thank you all for taking the time out of your busy mornings to sit here with me today, but you just got some free time, so you can add something back to your day. Again, if you have any questions, reach out and let me know.